Hi guys, it is Mandy from Mandyleeplays, and it's almost the end of the year, but before we go off to a brand new year, I wanted to do a before you buy for one last JRPG that is coming out, and that game is Octopath Traveler 0. This game comes out at $49.99. That is a steal, but don't buy this game if you don't actually like it. This is what this video is for, so I can tell you guys all you need to know about this game, and then you can make the decision on is it worth the buy for you. If you end up liking this video, please hit that like button, would appreciate it, and subscribe if you're not yet subscribed, and hit that hype button if you want to. So let's get into the video. First, I want to answer a question that I've seen a lot of people ask, and that is, why is it called Octopath Traveler 0? Well, there's actually a meaning to that. 0 is a prequel to Octopath Traveler 1. To be specific, Octopath Traveler 0 takes place in the same continent as Octopath Traveler 1. And that's why you see a lot of places that are similar, like the Woodlands, the Frostlands, and the Highlands. And the linking together thread is very small. It's mostly revolves around world building and the overall religion of the game. Also, the 0 might be a little bit misleading at first, but the producer of the game, Hitoru Suzuki, explained why it's called Octopath Traveler 0 in this Famitsu interview, which is surprising because Toyama Asano is known for being the main producer of the HD 2D games, but I guess he had his hands tied up with another game or another project like Adventures of Elliot. Anyways, Suzuki said the meaning behind the 0 is actually symbolic, and that symbolizes starting from 0 with a custom protagonist and rebuilding a town from 0. So the 0 in this game has double meanings. One of them is because it's a prequel to the first game, and the other one is the list of stuff that Suzuki mentioned in his interview. Now, the reason this game exists in the first place is mainly because the game derives from the mobile game Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent. If you know this channel, you know me, I hate mobile games. I didn't even know that game existed, so it was really surprising to find out that 0 came from a mobile game. But this version is not filled with gacha mechanics up the wazoo, thank goodness. But anyways, 0 is the new and improved version of the mobile game, and they did change a lot to make it its own unique game. So if you play the first two games, you'll probably be like, yeah, this is a bit different, and whether you like it or not is up to you, but I personally really like the differences so far. Now that that's out of the way, let's go on to the usual stuff we talk about in my before you buys. The first one being the console and the technical details. For the console portion, it is coming out on all platforms, so this includes the Nintendo Switch 1 and 2, PS4 and 5, Xbox Series X and S, and the PC via Steam, so that includes the Steam Deck as well. So we got all the consoles together. I love to see this type of harmony. Although, sad to say that the Switch 2 variant is indeed a keycard. And it's funny because it's only a 5 GB download. That is tiny. There is no reason they had to put this on a keycard. But anyways, I've said all my feelings when it comes to keycards in other videos, so I'm not gonna harp on it too bad over here. Also, the Switch 1 version does not have an upgrade path to the Switch 2, which sucks. Let's just say I'm disappointed. Alrighty, now time for the technical details. How is this game gonna run on your favorite platform? Unfortunately, Square hasn't given us a spreadsheet on how the game runs on the different platforms in America. They did release it in Japan, which makes this part a whole lot easier and a whole lot more accurate than me just guessing how it's gonna run. Side note though, the spreadsheet says something about how many buildings you can make. So depending on the console that you pick, you have a limit to how many buildings you could build, which is weird. So I'm also going to be adding how many buildings you could create. First, let's start with the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2. The Switch 2 runs the game at 1080p docked at 60 FPS, and you could create up to 400 buildings. Though it has been reported on the RPG site that the handheld version of the game runs lower than 1080p. It doesn't say what exactly, but it's not 1080p. If I were to guess, it's probably 720p. The game runs in 720p, 60 FPS, and you could create up to 250 buildings, which is not ideal, seeing as the Switch 2 version lets you make 400, but I'm guessing they had to cut corners on that because of the power of the Switch 1. And if you're really gung-ho about this building mechanic, the Switch copy might not be for you. Granted, the graphics are beautiful, and it'll probably still look beautiful on the Switch, it's just the performance is not the best. Now on to the PlayStation 5. You can run the game at 4K at 120 FPS if your TV can allow it. If your TV doesn't have that option, it will run at 60 FPS, and it could generate up to 500 buildings in your town. For the PlayStation 4, the game runs at 1080p, 60 FPS, and you can make up to 400 buildings. So it's kind of like the Switch 2. Now the Xbox Series X is the same as the PlayStation 5, so I really don't need to repeat myself. 4K, blah 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 blah. But for the Series S, it's a bit different. The game runs at 1080p, and for the FPS, you could either choose 120 if your TV could do that, or 60 FPS, and you could build 500 buildings. Now for the PC, I'll put the specs over here. The PC is kind of different because everyone has a different PC basically. As for the Steam Deck, it is currently unknown, but I'm assuming it's somewhat the same as the PlayStation 4, but that's just my own assumption. So now that we're done with all the nitty and gritty, let's get into the story of this game, and it's honestly pretty interesting. I kind of knew what plot points the story was going for, but I just didn't know the way they were gonna take it. So I was really surprised when I played the demo when it comes to the story. So one of the main differences between Octopath Traveler 0 and Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 is the fact that you can make your protagonist instead of choosing the preset characters. So this is not 8 different stories converging like the usual Octopath, but more of your protagonist going through a lot of different journeys. This game is all about revenge and restoration, as you, the character, are the main focal point of the story. So my synopsis is basically what I've gathered from the demo and what I've read online. So you start off your journey in this idyllic town called Wishville, where you, the character, is now grown and has taken up the job at the Watch. And you live with your childhood friends and neighbors that are just jolly and nice, and you just know that something's about to happen. And when this story actually starts, you're in the middle of a celebration for the religion and the people of Wishville. This festival is called the Day of Reverence. When you start the demo, the beginning cutscene that you see is basically the villains doing their villain things, twirling their mustaches, and all that. I will say that the villains so far have been really villainous. Like, there is no redeeming qualities to these people, and I guess that's the point. I guess now would be a good time to introduce the villains. First we have Hermania, Titos, and Auguste. And these 3 villains are in the search of different rings, and one of these rings is said to be located in Wishville. So meanwhile, while the protagonist and the other villagers prepare for their festival, you and your friends Thea and Fen go out to produce the azure, which is needed to complete the kindling. So on the day of the festival, where the music is nice and there's confetti everywhere and everyone is in good spirits, guess what happens? Then comes Tatos, one of the villains I mentioned before, and he just burns the whole town down. So in all this chaos, the town is burning, the protagonist's mom and dad both die, and a lot of other characters die. It's pretty sad. But you and some of your friends do manage to escape, thanks to this old scholar called Numos. Thankfully, Numos offers a place to stay, and his house is protected. Like, he's invisible to the seeing eye, so nobody could find them. So while everything is settling down, you and your friend manage to get back to the place where your town used to be. And a lot of the town folks are dead or missing. But your friend has the bright idea to start rebuilding the town. And having heard all of this, Numos, the old man who was hiding in a cabin, gives you the ring. And this ring is known as the Flamebringer, and then informs you that the 3 villains have rings as well. It tasks you to go and stop them and retrieve their rings. And mind you, this was all the prologue. And depending on which story you choose, which is you could go the route of wealth, power, or fame, it would determine which person you get to take out first, and it could be changed throughout the story. So if you pick wealth, don't think like you're just locked on to wealth. You could do the other 2. Now on to the gameplay. I love Octopath Traveler gameplay. It is so fun. And the gameplay is honestly the most alike when it comes to the other 2 Octopath Traveler games. But there are still changes to talk about. But first, let's talk about the basic combat. So this game has a traditional JRPG turn-based mechanic, which is built upon the break and boost features. What are the break and boost? Well, I'll let you know. So every enemy possesses specific elemental and weapon weaknesses, as well as a defined shield counter. The players must identify their weaknesses and attack them repeatedly to reduce the shield counter all the way to 0. And if you reach 0, they become broken. And this essentially means that they're stunned for about 2 turns, creating this window where you could go all out crazy with your attacks to deal some massive damage. Separately, characters accumulate boost points, or BP for short, which can be spent to increase the number of hits in an attack, which you could use strategically to break their defenses faster. For example, if they have 4 notches on their shield and you have the weakness but you can only hit once, you could boost those to make the attack hit 4 times. Or you could use the boost to increase the potency of a skill. If you use it for healing, you'll heal more. If you use it for attacks, you'll attack more, so on and so forth. It opens the door to a ton of different things that you could do, and I love it. But those are just the basics on how the gameplay works. There are also major changes to this gameplay as well. The biggest change is the expanded party. In the previous Octopath Traveler games, you can only have 4 characters out and the other ones are basically on standby. But in Octopath Traveler 0, in any given battle, you can bring up to 8 characters, which are split into the front row and the back row. The front row is for active members, while the back row is more for support. And this game has more than 30 playable characters, so that's a lot of customization. This requires players to build their team in a cohesive manner, and you can also change the front row characters with their corresponding back row characters without taking up a turn. And this allows immense tactical flexibility. I might get a bit overwhelmed. Or you could switch out a character that is low on HP or SP. And this brings up a lot of possibilities and a lot of different builds. Like, there'll probably be a build for all mages or all swordsmen or something funny like that. Who knows? There's a lot of builds that you could build, so you're not only building a town, you're also building a mini army. In the other 2 Octopath Traveler games, you had this thing called latent ability, which is basically an all-out attack, but in this game it's called ultimate techniques, and every player has their own unique skill. So yeah, there is a lot to talk about when it comes to the gameplay. Honestly, I'm kind of overwhelmed just thinking about it, with all the different members you can recruit and all their different jobs. Alrighty, on to the second big change in Octopath Traveler 0, and that is the town building mechanic. Now this is central not only for the story but for the gameplay itself. After that heartbreaking prologue where your town was torched, you and your friend decide to build up the town again. Rebuilding your hometown is one of the core gameplay mechanics, and as you progress in your adventure, you can acquire different materials for the town building process. Through Sia's carpentry skills, you can build housing, taverns, fields, and other buildings to help out the player and the whole town. And certain NPCs will be better suited for managing the town, so keep a close eye on their abilities and skills. This is one of the gameplay aspects I'm really excited about. I love town building mechanics stuff. It is one of my favorites, especially if it's shoved into a JRPG where it's not just building, it's also a JRPG adventure. A good example of this is Atelier Yumiya. I just finished playing that and it had a town building mechanic too, and I freaking loved it. Now, it's not as in-depth as like The Sims or anything. You're just plotting down different houses, seeing which people are good to manage stuff, and doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So with all that being said, that is it for today's video. If you have any questions about the game, please let me know in the comments down below. Are you excited for it or are you skipping it? If you liked the video, then please hit that like button. And if you love the channel and would love to see more of this type of content, please consider subscribing. I would very much appreciate it. And also hit that hype button if you found this video hypeable. And stay tuned for all my end of the year stuff. My favorite games, my least favorite games, all that good stuff. You can follow me on my socials in the description down below. Hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day, and as always, play a good game. Peace.